Alright, it is time for us to talk about another cameo for use with Shang Tsung. Today, we're going to be talking about Motaro. Motaro is a pretty decent cameo for Shang. He helps a lot with zoning and counter zoning, and he has a couple of fun tricks that are exclusive to Shang. So we'll go over all of those today, and we're going to go move by move, talking about everything he can do, what it does for Shang, and what it does in general. We are going to start with the simplest move on the list, which is Reflect. All of his moves are useful, but I think Reflect is the one that does what it says on the tin the most. Maybe Tail Shot, but they're close to each other in terms of application numbers. So, Reflect does what it says on the tin. That barrier will reflect projectiles that connect with it. So, you can see that if Liu Kang wants to toss his Cosmic Flame back at us after we zone him, look at that. And we got a punish. Now, some moves are not travel slow enough or have fast enough recoveries that we can't get a punish, like Liu Kang's Low Dragon. Liu Kang can actually block that, as you can see, unless it gets close enough. As you can see, as Motaro closes the gap, the projectile reflects closer and closer, and if you're close enough, it will, in fact, hit. Things like Kung Lao Hat are very easy for your opponent to block if they get reflected, but it doesn't matter. As long as your opponent is reacting to the projectile they threw, and Motaro is out and we can walk around with him, and he can walk forward, then we don't need to respect whatever they're doing. They have to crouch or block their own projectiles while we get to do whatever we want, including fire other projectiles if we want to. We're over here doing this, he's over there doing that, getting hit. He can't zone us back. Now, this is what happens if you just press Reflect. Motaro comes out. We can still move around a little bit while he reflects, and then he goes away. But if we hold the Kameo button after pressing back Kameo, he will walk forward, and we can walk with him. We can do whatever we want. As you can see, he also has one of the fastest cooldowns in the game. It's absolutely insanely quick, and there's no reason to ever not use Reflect if you think your opponent's about to fire, because it'll recharge almost instantly. It takes almost no time to do it, and it can be on screen for a real long time. So, there are a couple of tricks to know about this move. One of them is that it beats crushing projectiles, which is one of the things that Shang worries about a little bit, is something like Liu Kang's Enhanced Cosmic Flame. As you can see, if he just fires it, we lose. But if we use Motaro, he's the one who eats 120 damage as a punish. Other crushing projectiles have similar problems. Tanya, Sindel, probably Sub-Zero gets punished by his own Ice Ball, but maybe not. These things are all going to fire back at your opponent, and it's really, really bad for them to fire a crushing projectile into Motaro. They spend a bar, they get hit with usually a mid projectile that they will not have enough frames to jump because of the way that Reflect works with frame data. Even if they're able to block, they're almost certainly not going to be able to jump reliably. And they're going to take extra damage. So it's a very, very solid answer to crushing projectiles, which is something Shang struggles with. It does get beaten by a few tricks. Something like Ground Skull. So, we fire this at Shang. The Ground Skull, as you can see, still connects with Liu Kang. Quan Chi's Overhead Skull has a similar thing going on, where it'll probably hit Motaro before it hits Liu Kang. I haven't actually tested it, but it will not get reflected. And if somehow it does connect with the barrier that Motaro has, it does get reflected, but it actually just goes nowhere. It goes up into the air for Quan Chi or down into the ground for Shang, and it does not come back and hit the enemy who fired it. So if you're fighting somebody like Shang or Quan Chi, that's something to know, that you can't just always throw Reflect against dedicated zoners. Katana, her fan will just go, her overhead fan or her mid fan that she throws low and then it comes up out of the ground, those moves will not end up going back to Katana. they will get reflected, they will be beaten, but they will not actually hit your opponent when you do this. So non-projectiles will also win this battle. So things like Kano Ball, Striker Handcuffs, Sector Teleport Punch, these moves that reach full screen and basically function like projectiles but aren't projectiles, will all hit Motaro and knock him out of the reflect. And if your opponent puts these cameos in front of their own projectiles, they can stop Motaro from reflecting them. So like if Kano Ball is in front of Shang's projectiles, Kano Ball will hit Motaro, and then the projectiles will go through and hit Liu Kang, is what would happen if Shang was firing these at Liu Motaro. So it's worth being aware that there are answers that zoners can bring to beat this. And it's one of the reasons that I think Kano is exceptionally good for Shang, is because he cracks a lot of projectile immune moves like that. But for the most part, Motaro is a very safe thing to throw at. If Kano Ball is coming at you, for instance, it will hit Motaro before it hits you, and you'll still be able to advance if that's what you want to do, or fire projectiles if that's what you want to do. So, Reflect, very solid move. It has an application that does exactly what it says it does, but it's good at it. There are some weird scenarios that you might run into where opponents are doing something like reflecting it back at you. So if Motaro gets into a reflect war with another Motaro, we would have something like this happen. And you see that projectile just became nothing after the second reflect. So the Motaro projectile reflection thing is not just an infinite bounce back and forth, so whoever called Motaro last wins. Instead, it's just if it gets reflected twice, the projectile is gone. So, the next least complicated move, in my opinion, well, this isn't even opinion, this is a very uncomplicated move, is his forward cameo, Tail Shot. Now, Tail Shot, as you can see, it recharges real fast as well, which is fantastic, and in fact can lead to pretty impressive block springs for Shang if your opponent is respecting it. So, if we do something like this, now you can see that Tail Shot was a low, and it hit for plus 13 frames on block. That is why people like this move. This is one of the primary uses of Motaro, is to make yourself crazy plus on block after a string like that. And because it recharges so fast, you can actually use it 3 times in a combo. With Shang in particular. Like that. So, thanks to Shang's long string and Motaro's quick recharge, you can get a lot of block pressure out of Motaro. And that's primarily what this move is used for. It is a low, so it like kind of mixes people up, and technically you could do something like this into an overhead, right? Or you could even do this into another low, because this 19 frame move has 13 frames knocked off. That essentially means only 6 frame moves beat it, which only a handful of characters have, like Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Kung Lao are the only people who have 6 frame moves. And I guess Li Mei technically has an armored reversal that can come out. I think it comes out in 6 frames, essentially. It's weird the way it works and is integrated into the game. But if you're -7, it can punish you. But if you are -6, it can't. So yeah, it can't punish this move either. You're just talking about... You're actually talking about nobody. You would need a 5 frame move to punish this. So, you can go into his long high damage string. You can go into his low. You can go into his overhead. The overhead is not actually safe here. Your opponent has 10 frames. They could do something. They could jab out of it. They could maybe even get a full combo punish, depending on the character. But if they don't see it coming, it'll get them anyway, if they're respecting you. And if they try to do a low move, this low crushes, so you can get people on that too, even when they're trying to poke out of Motaro. So, you have great routes like this. You have great routes where you just keep going and going and going into a mix-up. And of course, because it's plus 13 frames, you could also go into a throw, as long as your opponent's respecting you. Now, everybody can armor out of this, which should be no surprise to anybody. We'll do Liu Kang's armor. We'll do Motaro tail shot. As you can see, armor right out. And it creates just enough spacing that you can't do something like down 1, but you could down 3. Like, because that has great reach, so you can do. And as you can see, they can also armor out before the projectile comes. But it's worse than that, actually. Your opponent can jab out of this move. It is fake. So there we go. 7-frame low jab. All I'm going to do is recording. Nope. Hits me. It doesn't seem to hit Motaro. So Motaro does come back again quickly if this happens. But you can get full combo punished for this. Everybody has 7-frame standing one. So if we did something like this, full combo punish. So if your opponent knows, then they'll get you. And the way you're going to mix it up is you're going to try to just stagger it. The same way that you might stagger this string, you might go... And then this time I do only go to 2, and now I go to 4, and now I go to 1, and now I go through all of them, right? You're going to do the same thing with Motaro. You're going to have to go, like, well, this time I'm not going to do the claw, and I'm going to do that. This time I'm going to do the claw. Like that. This time it's only 2 moves into Motaro. And if you start staggering it, you cannot get this crazy long block string. You're going to do this to opponents who demonstrate that they know there's a gap right there. And most people do know that there's a gap right there. And even if they don't know, they're going to try to jab out and see if there's a gap. So people are going to figure out and break down the Motaro tail shot pressure pretty quickly. It is a little bit better when you use it like somewhere like that, where your opponent wasn't super sure they could press right here after 1 move, and now we've got them trapped, right? So it creates frame traps, but only against the uninitiated. So it has low damage is another thing going on with it. When your opponent blocks it, it actually does great chip damage. 15 for 1 shot is great chip damage. But when your opponent doesn't block it, it does 40 damage for 1 hit, and it is a knockdown. So if we did this, we can't follow that up. And our opponent's only taking 40 damage, so it's just not that great of a hit. It gives a 29-frame knockdown, which is pretty good. You can definitely wind up for meaties with a low, or you could even meaty with this overhead. You have plenty of time. So you can do whatever you want on Wake Up, so it's not bad to get hits with Tail Shot. It's just a little less damage than other stray Kameo hits might yield. Like less damage than a Striker Low, for instance. The distance on it is also okay, but it's not, even though it's a projectile, the distance is not anywhere close to full screen. As you can see, you're at about round start, it'll work. In fact, I bet it works at round start. Test that out. Yep, works at round start. Doesn't really work much further than round start, a little bit further. So it is, like, really a projectile in a meaningful way, but it's also not the sort of projectile you're hoping for when you look for a low projectile. It's not full screen or anywhere close to it. It can be outspaced. But it can help you outspace your opponents, and in truth, if your opponent blocks it, you're in a really great position. If you're at round start, you go, oh, my opponent blocked it, now I can run in and do my low. Something like that, or you could do your overhead. So it gives you options in neutral. that many other cameos don't quite give you. It is a little bit slow on startup. At 26 frames, this is quite reactable. I don't think very many people are going to get hit by this low. But them blocking it is a desirable outcome too, and I think that will be a common reaction instead of trying to challenge, although I do think it is challengeable if your opponent is bold and has a move that reaches far enough. Now, because this move is a summon, and it is a move that you're going to use in your block strings, it actually kind of nerfs your chip damage. Now, normally what Shang would want to do in this route would be go into spinning spikes, right? To get the maximum chip damage, because that does a lot of chip. But because this is a summon, you cannot use it from spinning spikes. You have to use it as a special cancel. So you're getting less chip damage than other cameos might offer you on block strings, and you're getting less safety, frankly, because they can jab out of it. It will get beaten by projectile immune moves like Ice Armor. Motaro Reflect, in theory, should beat it. I'm not sure if it's fast enough in most applications. And things like Tremor Reflect or Chameleon's Glow are all going to stop this move from hitting. It is a projectile. And the final trait that this move has, which is actually not listed in its description on the pause menu, is that it's an invincible wake up. So we're going to have Liu Kang do his, my favorite meaty. It's not really his favorite meaty. It's my favorite meaty for demonstrating things like this. So he blocks, he does that. Tail shot, invincible wake up. Now, if you hit as an invincible wake up, you only get 8 frames of advantage. So do not think that you can just go into mix after you hit with this as an invincible wake up. But it is a good invincible wake up. It really does what it's supposed to do. And it has a special quality that no other invincible wake up that I have found has. Which is that this is safe on block. 8 frames with good spacing. -8 with spacing that nobody can possibly punish with an 8-frame move. Even sweeps. Some people have sweeps that reach this far, but they're way slower than 8 frames. Nobody has jabs that reach this distance. So if you did invincible wake up Motaro, nobody's punishing that. Maybe Melina, but I don't think so. So, all in all, this is one of the best invincible wake-ups in the game, actually. It's a low, it's safe, and it's actually invincible. Some of them just aren't. So, I do recommend... Oh, it also has a crazy fast cooldown. So, I recommend using this all the time on Wake Up. If you have Motaro and you think your opponent's going to meter you, just do it. Even if you don't think they're going to meter you, just do it anyway because it's safe. I think firing it most of the time when you wake up is pretty good. If your opponent is doing some kind of armor break meaty, like Liu Kang's forward 4, then you have to rethink that. But if your opponent is fond of single hit meaties, doesn't think about armor breaks, this is fantastic. Even if they do, it's good to get them every once in a while. Now, we are moving into the most complicated parts of Motaro. And we are going to start with his tail turret, because tail turret, it's quite a move, but it is, I think, a little less gimmicky than teleport. So, this is tail turret, his down cameo. As you can see, it is a summon, but again, you only summon very briefly, and now I can move around while he fires 3 mid-hitting projectiles with good chip damage. And he fires them somewhat rapidly. But because these are happening when you are able to move around, you have a ton of advantage when this happens. This move opens up a bunch of weird things. Now, it costs the full Kameo bar, as you can see, but it is because it is powerful. It also has a pretty reasonable cooldown. About an average speed cooldown that starts early-ish. And it won't keep you from using Motaro for the rest of the round the way that many full Kameo meter moves will, like Darius Tornado Kick or the Goro Stomp. Those are both two moves that cost the full Kameo meter, and they just they keep you from using the Kameo for the rest of the round. That's not the case with Tail Turret. Tail Turret you'll get Motaro back in time to do other stuff. So Tail Turret is a move that has some really weird properties that depend on a lot of circumstantial stuff. So this is what happens at point blank range. As you can see, not a combo or anything like that. But if we're hanging out back here at full screen, that all changes. Those 3 Motaro shots will all combo with each other for, I think it's about 12% by itself, if you hit with any of them at full screen. Just like that. Yeah, 10%. There you go. So, this move is crazy powerful as zoning. You summon it, you fire all these, and as you can see, Motaro still combos. We just did 17% with a triple skull barrage plus a Motaro if they get caught by the first triple skull. You have to time it properly. And at the end of that combo, you can catch them with more projectiles. And this extends to even things like Ground Skull. You can do some very impressive combos with Motaro into Ground Skull. %, without it spending any meter on that. You could probably do more. And you could do Motaro into Triple Skull. Motaro into Triple Skull into Ground Skulls. And I'm sure you can do better than this. I just haven't experimented with it enough. You can get close to 30% off of those if you're willing to spend meter. I think you can even get close to 30% if you're not willing to spend meter. Shang has a lot of projectile options. Yeah, we're breaking 20% easily without any meter. And we're not even getting the full combo. So, it's easy to see how this can power up your zoning in a major way. And because all of those projectiles are mid, and they have this weird arc to them, your opponent pretty much just has to respect these. They can't jump, they can't crouch, they can't block. Or, I mean, they can block, but that's all they can do. They're going to take a ton of chip damage. And if they get hit, they're going to get comboed. It's going to be really, really bad. Even if they get caught by the last one, you can go into Ground Skulls and punish them very harshly for it. So, it gives you all of these very powerful setups. It forces respect for straight skulls and for Ground Skulls, and just forces your opponent to eat a lot of chip damage. It's also oddly good against Motaro himself. Motaro Reflect against Tail Turret. It works, but it can be crouched. Do something like this. You can see it doesn't always hit. It's a little bit wonky. So it's a pretty good move against Reflect. It's also pretty good against something like Sub-Zero's Ice Armor, because Sub-Zero's Ice Armor can only take 5 hits of projectiles, and if you combine it with this Triple Skull, then your opponent is going to take 6 hits just from that and Motaro's. And then you start another barrage and keep going. So it's not the best solution to projectile immunity. It's not going to beat something like Viltrumite Stance or Kenshi's Charge. Those things are both still going to crack you. But it's not bad against Sub-Zero armor. It also won't crack the Jade Glow that Chameleon gives you. And it's not fantastic against crushing projectiles, because these are all really projectiles, and they do have to travel on the same route that a crushing projectile would crush them. But it's not terrible, because they're likely to hit Shang and not Motaro, and then Motaro is likely to hit them after they hit Shang. So you'd rather be using Reflect against crushing projectiles, but this isn't a complete failure. The other big application for this move is going to be as Oki Pressure. Now this is much more peculiar than the way that you use it on zoning, but you're going to do something like knock your opponent down, summon him, and then when they block, come on, auto. You can do something like that and make yourself a block string. So, go into Motaro. And you've got access to powerful block strings this way. Unfortunately, the timing for this sort of thing is a little bit on the strict side, because you need to be hitting the last hit of whatever string you're doing at this just before Motaro's final tail shot connects. So you want to make sure that you've done your homework on it, essentially. And you want to make sure you have enough time to actually call out Motaro and begin your block string before your opponent gets up. For instance, the sweep is not good enough. You're going to need a harder knockdown than that. Something like Shang's overhead. We're getting 27 frames. That's great. This move should be fine. So, overhead, Motaro call. Yeah, that's not what I'm trying to do. And see, that worked out perfectly. But you need to make sure you're timing this correctly. But it does respond reasonably well to delayed wake up. So it covers a lot of options that many Kameos would struggle to cover. It is also a pretty useful move for armor breaking, because you can see that the tail shot and my knee are connecting at a similar time, and because Motaro is behind Shang, even if Shang gets hit, this is likely to hit them and break the combo. And even if they used armor, it will probably break their armor too. So the up-close applications for Tail Turret are wider than you would expect. But because it costs a full Kameo meter, they are still something that you might hesitate on a little bit. And it is basically an Oki situation, a little bit like a held low hat would be. And because it's a launcher and it just dominates the screen, it just holds the whole screen down, it is very good. It also has some further Shang-specific sort of applications. which is something like, well, if you're doing it on block, you can just, I can do whatever I want, well, you have to sit there and block, so as long as you're not going to call ice armor or something, I can go like this, I can go, oh, okay, I'll just turn into you, start your mix-up. So you can make really nasty block strings with this if your opponent has access to good overheads. You know, if you're Liu Kang, you can go into something like this, and you can end up with really powerful block string scenarios on Oki that are better than most cameos are able to provide you. The other weird thing you can do with this that's a little bit Shang specific, technically everybody can do this move, but Shang makes good use of it in a unique way, is that we can make an unblockable setup. Now that throws a shove, as you can see, we have time in there to fire a ground skull after the shove. So we can get an actual combo. And that's pretty insane. Shove him. Go Motaro. Shove. It's a little finicky. It has a timing thing. If you dedicate the time to learn the timing, it won't be hard. And if you time it a little too late on the shove, you will get your throw animation broken, and you'll just do the damage from the throw plus. There we go. I timed it late. I just get 60 damage unblockable. But it does make checkmate scenarios because this move is a mid. So when you have your opponent in a bad Oki situation, you can call this and go, I have 60 unblockable damage no matter what you do. If you get hit just wrong, then I can actually do something like 12%, I think was the most I could find off of this move. Because you can definitely call the EX skulls after the first skull. There it is. So. Something like that. Yeah, almost 12%. I'm sure if you experiment with it a little more, you might be able to find a higher damage route. But a 12% unblockable is pretty excellent. So, that is another unconventional use of Tail Turret that is somewhat exclusive to Shang Tsung. And just having this many projectiles on the screen is just generally good for you. You cover a lot of space, your opponent has very few options when something like this is happening. So, the final move in Motaro's kit is his Centaurian Warp. It is his neutral cameo, it is his only real ambush, and it is just like that. Now this move also has crazy fast cooldown, which is a kind of a running theme with Motaro, is that he cools down. Okay, maybe not crazy fast, but about an average cooldown for a pretty exceptional move. It is a teleport, exactly as it says on the tin. It comes out really quickly, and it has very little recovery for what it is, and it allows you to do lots of shenanigans. Not the least of which is this right here. You can combo off of your triple skulls from full screen using the Motaro teleport. Sort of a Shang exclusive trick. I'm sure you can combo off of double skull too, but you need to find the timing, and I haven't. Just like that. So, you get a full combo every time that you do this. You can combo into forward 4 as well, so you can get your highest damage route. But you need to be very strict on the timing to get that route. There we go. Combo straight into your forward 4. And get the full route. You can go up to 38% on that if you actually land it properly. And you can combo off single skull too. You can also make block strings off of your skulls. So you can go like this. Try to do that. So you can do a lot of things people don't expect with Motaro's teleport. There you go. You have an excellent block string brewed up just because you got to fire triple skull. And if it hits, you will time it properly to come in for a full combo. You basically have this sort of option select. And if your opponent is crouching and they jab you out of your teleport, they'll get hit by the... I mean, they have to crouch jab in order to not get hit by the triple skulls that are incoming. So, it's very, very powerful for zoning, oddly enough, in a way that Kung Lao teleport is not. Kung Lao cannot get you that combo, only Motaro can get you that combo. And you can also use it as a cheeky way to try to juke your opponent out of regular block strings. So, your opponent's blocking, and you come in and you do this. You can try to be safe by doing that, and then if they tried to punish you in the normal way, Motaro would take you away, and you come up behind them and have an advantage. But if your opponent sees that you're going to teleport, they can just punish the teleport instead. So you're not actually safe here, but you can juke people. Like that. And this applies to other moves. Anything that's like grossly unsafe, you can do it there. Something like spinning spikes, you would always do it because spinning spikes is already full combo punishable. You might as well just try to juke them with Motaro if you committed to the move. Although you won't be committing to that move very much with this team because you don't have a way to make it safe. Unless you already did the Oki setup with tail turret. So this lets you basically just enforce a better zoning plan. Teleport and zoning doesn't sound like the sort of thing that goes together. It sounds a little antithetical, but the way that it works with Motaro in particular is just very strong. You can now do triple skull into block string, triple skull into full combo. These are just really, really powerful. It also sometimes combo breaks if you call it at the right time. So if for instance, if I call it here and my opponent was actually punishing me for the spinning spikes, Motaro might grab me out of the punish and leave. If they hit Motaro, it won't work. So it's a little bit just random. But if you're just hitting Motaro at the end of things, sometimes you just combo break. And some people, like Shang himself in fact, get full combo punished on drop if they drop their combos. So it can be very powerful. But it's not super reliable. The final Shang-specific technique for this is that you can use it for an EX injection combo. A little bit later than that. As you can see, true combo, restand, 42 damage, good spacing. So, if you are trying to deny your opponent options by keeping them in a restand, this is a thing. You will not be able to form steal them and then teleport and continue the combo. That's not possible. You're just getting a restand, and you're getting more damage. It does cost 2 bars and a cameo use, so it's resource intensive, just like every EX injection route is. But it can be worth it. If you're getting the kill, this is absolutely worth it. And honestly, when Shang spends 2 bars on his regular skull juggles, he's often doing pretty awful damage. He struggles to reach 42% without a fatal blow if he's doing regular skull juggle amplifications to extend his combo. So this is a higher damaging option than you normally have, even if it is very resource intensive. And you won't be able to continue juggling them again after this route because they've got so much gravity scaling that there's just no way it's going to happen. But you could choose to end with injection to push them full screen for a regular knockdown. You could end with spinning spikes to get more frames of knockdown. If you end with spinning spikes, you get, what, 39 frames of knockdown at full screen. So you could choose to do that where you're not normally able to. It's a little bit less damage, but you end with a great Oki situation at full screen. You can end with injection just like you always do. You can end with triple skulls to keep them restood. So it has applications, even if they're a little bit narrow. It's a gimmick. It's a thing you can do. Do it sometimes. Probably don't do it unless you think you're going to win the game because of it, though, because the 2 bars plus a cameo is just a stiff price. And that brings me to my overall thoughts about Motaro. I think that Motaro is a decent cameo for Shang Tsung. I wouldn't put him in the highest level. I don't think he's up there with Kano or Sector, for instance, who I think just do everything Shang wants to do. But I do think he's helpful up close if your opponent doesn't know, and if you're creating Oki situations. He's helpful for that. But low shot is fake, and you should know that it's fake, and if your opponent calls you out on it, you should stop doing it, because they're going to keep calling you out on it. And it's very, very harsh punishment when you get called out for it. You eat a full combo. It's not like you just want to goof around and see if they can guess right. You could try staggering it, but it's got the same problem every stagger does, and every stagger gets blown up sometimes. So, and this one has a particularly long startup. So just get ready to get blown up by Motaro if you start using tail shot to create block strings. So mostly the way he helps up close is by setting up tail turret and going into a really good Oki situation. He is a big buff to your zoning. You do tons of meterless damage from full screen, and you do tons of chip damage from full screen if Motaro is firing his tail turret. And when you hit with triple skull, you can use the teleport to get full combos off of a straight projectile. It's fantastic. You cannot use teleport to get combos off of ground skull. For ground skull, you're still going to be using Shang's normal amplified skull juggles if you unhit, unless he's using tail turret to juggle them. But you can do it off of straight skull, and they have to respect straight skull because of the mids. Projectile immunity is still a little bit of an issue for Motaro. A lot of his moves are projectiles, and a lot of the ways he powers you up is by powering up your projectiles. So things like Viltrumite Stance and Kenshi's Charge, and to a lesser extent Sub-Zero Armor, and Motaro Reflect are all still intimidating for you. And there's reason to worry when you're just tossing them out against those people. And the real answer to projectile immunity is basically just teleport over there and fight them. And that's just not a fantastic answer. This cameo also doesn't give Form Stealer combos. It does give Form Stealer block strings, right? If you have Oki and you want to do this, you can just be like, alright, I'm just you now. And that's a thing. It's powerful. It might even be more powerful than the combos are in general. I tend to prefer the combos because they allow you to get the kind of Oki situation that your opponent likes, because you're going to use your opponent's ender. But if your opponent has mix-ups, changing into them in the middle of a block string is fantastic, and it's enabled by this, you know? Going like this. Something your opponent could technically hit you, but they'll get shot by Motaro and it'll break. and then there'll be another Motaro shot coming in still, which could juggle them. And you can end up with great combo situations if you form steal that way, but you're not actually going to form steal mid-combo unless you're already hitting them with tail turret. If they're hit with tail turret, they get juggled, and you have plenty of time to do a form steal, as you would assume, because you just can do whatever you want here. Even if we just wait for the hit. Plenty of time to go into a form steal. And if you're full screen, you're in a much better position, right? You can just go, okay, he got hit. He's getting juggled now. Come over there. Do whatever we want. So, not having great access to form stealer combos is not a very big deal. Form stealer is usually bad. Usually you're changing into your opponent, who has played way more of the mirror match than you have because you've been sitting here learning Shang instead of learning them. And you're usually in an advantageous position for the transformation, but you've changed the match from I understand Shang really well to I kind of understand your character, but you really understand your character. And it's just almost never favorable. So it's not a big deal that you lose Form Stealer. Form Stealer is great, and it has applications in this game. It's not like previous games where it is just a stone cold useless move. If you want to play as your opponent, that is a strategy you can pursue. Motaro is probably not the answer to doing that, though. I think you're going to play a very traditional Shang game with Motaro, where you zone and zone and zone some more. But I do think that Tail Turret is going to power it up a lot, and so is the teleport. So, I think Motaro is a decent pick, and if you want to pick him, you can go right ahead and do that. Just be aware of the gaps in his game plan, and the gaps in Shang's game plan that he's not shoring up. So, that's the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a like, a comment, a subscribe, and your social security number. I'll see you in the next one.